Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday is Star Saga, the RPG Shoot 'em Up Hybrid released for the GBA. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Developed by WayForward and published by Namco for the GBA in August of 2005, Star Saga has the distinction of being the only RPG shoot 'em up hybrid that I'm personally aware of. I chose this for this week's Shoot 'em Up Saturday to celebrate the start of the RPG Limit Break Speedrunning Marathon. Check that out on Twitch. I'll even be hosting a couple games as well. Star Saga has you playing the role of Ian Wrecker, an ace fighter pilot for Earth. You start the game defending against a Krill invasion, and the first stage is relatively basic. You start by flying over the cityscape, and then as you move on you'll encounter different, more powerful enemies. At some one point we see his squad mates, who are unfortunately taken out at that point. There's also a section where you're dodging these lasers from this awesome platform that's taken out in a really classic style, and then we top off the stage with a boss battle where you can destroy all the guns that the boss has, or you can just take out the eyes for a quick end of the boss. It's at this point of the game that we're introduced to the RPG elements of the game. We take direct control of Ian moving around his mothership, and throughout the course of the game we'll be controlling him in star bases and on planets for really the bulk of the game. Diving into the story a little bit, Wrecker is given the assignment of infiltrating the Krill. This is done through even deceiving him a little bit. He's cast off by his government and sent as an exile to the Krill, who accept him as this pilot and start setting him to work. It's at this point where we're introduced to the core gameplay loop of Star Saga. So we'll ultimately land the star bases on planets and we'll start exploring them. The really interesting facet of this as an RPG is the random battles that we'll encounter are horizontal shooter sections, and that's part of the brilliance and frustration of this game. Throughout the course of exploring, you'll be drawn into these random encounters. And these random encounters take place in these horizontal shoot 'em up sections where you'll have a yellow number displayed in the top right of the screen. That number is the number of enemies you have to defeat to clear that particular encounter. As you defeat enemies, they'll drop these little crystals that will be your experience, and that's how you level up. Even though you do encounter enemies that you can defeat on the field, there's not really much point in taking them out if they're not in your way. You don't really get anything for them except for maybe some health or some smart bomb drops. Let's talk a little bit more about the shoot 'em up sections. As far as controls are concerned, they're relatively basic. You have the ability to move around the field, and sometimes you'll encounter terrain that's tight. In fact, there's one random encounter that you can run into where you'll ultimately crash into a wall before you even take control of the ship. But we have the ability to move around the field, we can shoot, and there's a couple different modes for our shots. There's our custom mode, which I'll get to in just a little bit, and you can also switch over to a ship's base firing mode. We also have the ability to use a speed boost so we can move the ship around faster on the screen. We can change between the two types of setups that we've got, and there's also a smart bomb that we can set off. One of the neat elements of the random battles is when you're sucked into your ship, it's not going to be the same ship every time. The size and the shape of the ships will go and change. Sometimes you'll be in a really fast fighter, sometimes you're going to be in this bigger freighter, or even a mothership where if it gets hit once, you'll launch a smaller pod. I mentioned you could customize the way your ship shoots. The way that works is, as you explore the planet, you'll come across these crates which contain gun data, and that gun data will unlock various types of upgrades for your ship. There are 28 different cannon shots which affect the direction your shot shoots, 20 different bullet types, which affects what kind of bullet you're shooting, and then 28 different impacts, which will change the way your shot behaves when it hits an enemy. Those totals equal a staggering combination of different shot types that really adds to some of the fun of the game, finding just the best combination for the way you want to shoot and the kinds of encounters you're getting. So as we move through the story, at the end of every chapter, we'll encounter basically this boss stage, which happens to be a relatively long, personally I feel a little bit overly long stage, that will culminate in a boss battle for each of the different planets that you fight on. And there are 6 chapters total, so that's something to keep in mind. And the boss fights are fun. Some of them that I've encountered so far are trickier than others, but it's a really great way to kind of change up the whole gameplay and even see if the type of setups you're coming up with your ship are working really well. And there we have it. Sigma Star Saga served up for your enjoyment. So diving a little bit into the flavors of the game, the minus flavors, the big one that I have is, after a while, the random encounter battles start to feel a little on the samey side. And not just that, but it's actually a fairly frequent encounter rate, so as you're running through the overworld trying to explore, or in some cases get someplace really fast, you'll keep on being pulled into these battles when you don't want to be or don't need to be, and that can be a little frustrating. My other minus flavor is the boss stages, and the first stage kind of fits into the same one as well, just feel way too long for what they need to be, and that's a little bit frustrating. Although the plus side of that is you do have the ability to level up before you get to a boss, and leveling up does fully heal you, so it's not all bad. The plus flavors though, so I love the customizability that exists in the game itself. Having all those different gun datas that you can collect and customize the way that your ship shoots is really wonderful. The game does have multiple endings, so it's possible that you could also play through it a few times trying to go and get the best ending possible. I believe there's 4 endings total. And then the last, and this is the big plus flavor, just that unique combination of taking this RPG and merging it with a shoot 'em up. It's one of those things that you might not think would work, but surprisingly it actually comes across really well. Though I haven't finished it myself, Sigma Star Saga is a title that I feel is really unique in the shoot 'em up genre, and I would like to go and see other developers kind of try their hand at this same kind of idea. I've had a lot of fun with it thus far, and I plan to finish it up. Alright, well, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I chose Sigma Star Saga due to its RPG nature to celebrate the beginning of the RPG Limit Break Marathon. So really, if you're interested in RPGs and speedruns, I would highly encourage you to check out this marathon on Twitch TV/RPG Limit Break when it begins on Sunday, May 5th. As I mentioned, I will be hosting a couple runs throughout. You can follow me on my Twitter for when I'll be going live on the mic. With that said, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week. And as always, I look forward to seeing you again next week.